right, there we go. Okay, welcome, Trevor.
Hi.
We're back, Holiday Systems Inc., with another Life Before. We have Trevor Greggs here. I'll let her introduce herself and then we'll have a conversation, get some background on her.
Yeah, thanks, Dom. Thanks everybody for tuning in. As Dom said, my name is Trevor Greggs. I am a public relations consultant and digital strategist for a global advisory firm. Um, yeah, very excited to be here. I'm sure I will dive into more of my background, what I do in this conversation. So, yeah.
So, what exactly do you do in your role?
Yeah. So that's that's a very good question, and the reason why I say that is because I feel like it kind of varies daily. So in terms of my title, so I am a public relations consultant and digital strategist, but the overarching title would be a consultant. And so essentially, what that means is I serve as a strategic advisor or strategic counsel to my clients. My clients range their Fortune 500 brands, their governmental entities, institutions of higher education, retail brands, nonprofit organizations. You name it, I've worked with them and currently work with them. But going back to my title, as I mentioned, I am a public relations consultant and digital strategist. And so, what I do in my role, I know I mentioned just a second ago that I serve as this strategic advisor to my clients, but essentially, the brands that I work with, or not just the brands that I work with, but all brands, I help them, navigate this super complex world that we live in. And as you know, as everybody sees, we're living in this time where so many things are popping up in the world. Whether it's politically, relating to the environment and sustainability, education, equity and justice, it doesn't matter. There's so many things that are relevant to today and are relevant to brands and what they're facing and their mission and their values. And it's my job to ensure that they are putting out the right messaging to reach their stakeholders and their target audiences, that they're maintaining their brand, that they're putting out and leveraging the right tactics and strategies to ensure that they are doing what they need to do to not only stay relevant, but ensure that they are maintaining their brand, but also putting out what is relevant to what's happening in today's world.
So, continuing to be agile. That's what we call agile in my space.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, my company is driven by innovation and helping develop things faster. But of course, the world changes, right?
Mm-hmm.
Constantly changing, constantly moving in a different direction. You have to pivot. So let's say, for example, in 2 weeks, we're working on a certain product and it's high demand for that product. Once we end that 2 weeks, we reevaluate if we need to continue pushing this product or do we need to add more to the product or go back and revise things. So I think that's similar to what you're doing inside of the company as well. We work in technology and we work in business, right? So from the top down, you have to have business decisions before you get into technology based products or service based products. And I like what you do. And when you reached out to me, I was like, oh, yeah, this is a conversation I really want to have because you are very knowledgeable in your space, right? We all have specialties and we all have the space that we need to speak into, and then we need to promote that so others can know what those things are and how to get into those spaces. So that's what I really want to get into the conversation about today, so we can maybe motivate some people to be like you.
And just like you too.
So how did you get started? Like, how did you come across this career pathway?
Yeah. So gosh, you're gonna make me go rewind all the way back to my younger years. So I remember when I was younger, probably like, oh gosh, maybe 6, 7, like very, very young. I have always been, I don't know, maybe you can tell now, but I've always been just like a girl's girl, like a girly girl. Like I was just this like this Barbie, right? And so I just knew, like, you cannot tell me that growing up, I wasn't going to be in fashion, specifically a fashion designer. Like I just knew that was my calling. And so as I got older, my parents were always strong advocates of education. Not only that, but I just also just have loved learning ever since I was younger. And, as I got older, I started to think about, okay, like, would this be practical? Because I know that, you have to work to pay the bills, and I want to do something that I'm also passionate about. So, okay, I was just thinking like, okay, how can I, do something in fashion, but make it relevant to today and the concerns of today and, something that will pay the bills. So, um, I actually started Googling and actually came across this thing called fashion PR. And I had never heard of public relations before. And I was just like, oh, that's interesting. It has to do with, communicating and being creative and thinking outside the box. So I started to, dive deeper into that, research it a bit more, this is probably around like high school age, early college. I started to, look into like who were some of the leaders in the industry. And not saying that I'm not passionate about fashion now, because it's still one of my favorite things. But as I started learning more about the public relations industry, I started figuring out like, oh, it doesn't just have to be fashion. There's so many different sectors and areas and industries that utilize and leverage public relations and communicating and developing different tactics for these brands and organizations to maintain their brand and reach these targeted audiences. And not only just that, but when I was younger as well, whenever I would we would have family time and I would look at TV, right? And so of course, commercials come on, and of course with commercials, a lot of these brands have different like slogans and catchphrases. So for example, like Subway, you automatically think eat fresh, right? Because that's the slogan. And so I just remember when I was younger, me and my family, we'd be watching TV and I would just be like, oh, that I feel like the slogan should have been XYZ. And they would just turn to me and they'd be like, that's clever. Like, that's kind of smart. And I don't know. I just had this thing when I was younger where I would just like, it would just pop up and it would just come. Like, I would just think of like these slogans and phrases and kind of like these like little mini campaigns in my head for these brands that weren't paying me, that did not know who I was. And that just, I don't know, it just kind of just worked. It just kind of just became my thing. And I think it just ties so well with the PR industry and strategic communications, and especially my digital expertise, because, these organizations and brands, specifically with their audiences, they're trying to keep their audience's attention because there's so many things that are competing in this world where their audiences are saying, okay, you only have, my short time span, you only have this amount of time with me. Like, what do I need to know? Why is this relevant to me? Why is this important to me? And so, yeah, that kind of just stemmed from there when I was younger. And I just love like the creative aspect of my industry. There's no one size fits all. There's no one approach to things, especially with all of these organizations and brands and companies. You truly get to leverage your creativity and just your out of the box thinking. And I do that on a daily basis. And I absolutely love it. I love seeing what I can come up with. I love seeing how my clients react to things. I love seeing my ideas show up in commercials. Mm-hmm. I love seeing my ideas show up in advertisements and on websites and in brand campaigns. And it's just so rewarding to me. And it's just so, it's rewarding, yet it's so funny just to see how the mini version of me growing up, how, I came up with these little quick sayings and quick catchphrases and slogans, and how it's now just manifested into what I do now. So, yeah.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. See, my story is a little different. I didn't know what I wanted to do.
And that's okay. That's okay. Sometimes you gotta figure it out as you move on.
Yeah. I started out playing basketball. So, like when you're an athlete, that's the only thing you think about is making it to the league and trying to get there and keep pushing. But then once I didn't play basketball anymore, I was like, I don't really have any skills. I don't feel like. But one of my skills was leading, right? So I
Yeah.
could lead. I was a creative thinker. I process information pretty quick, and I could spit it out. And that came from like learning different plays and communicating on the basketball court and things like that. So
Mhm.
when I came back from playing basketball, not came up, but when I came back from playing basketball, it was more so, okay, I have to get a job because I'm about to have a son. And I want my son to look at me like I'm still that guy, because the only thing I depended on at one time in my life was basketball and being known for that.
Mhm.
So I said, what can I do? And it took me years to navigate through a sea of try this, try this. And I actually landed in a mine, and I hated it because it concealed and it pushed my creativity down, because it was like, you go here, you do this every day.
Mhm.
I'm so frustrated with life. I was like, let me join the military. I could get back on a team, right?
Mhm.
But it just so happened when I joined the military and I went to A school. I went to the Navy. So in the military, you have a basic training, and then you have a technical school. Then you have to do your job training. So A
Mhm.
school is like your job training. So while I was there, picked up the basketball again, and then my CO was like, "Why don't you try out for the All Navy team?" And I was like, "Oh man, here it goes again. I'm trying to get away, but I keep getting pulled back."
Yeah.
Right, coming home and came across this thing called Scrum, and one of my friends was in the Navy, and we were reservists at the time, and he told me, "Man, you'll be good at this." And I said, "What is Scrum? It sounds like a scam. You pay somebody to mentor you." Because where I come from a very small town, so like
Yeah.
everyone needs mentors and everyone needs coaching when you're breaking into something that you're not familiar with. But I
Mhm.
didn't understand that because my town was very small. The only thing I knew was like the mind and basketball. So he said, I can hook you up with my mentor. He could teach you the ins and outs. And I said, okay. I went back to working at the mine. I was like, I'm done with this. Let me go. I'll pay the money. I paid like $3,000. He gave me a crash course on Scrum, and then that just opened the door to like corporate America.
Mhm.
Um, when I got my first role, and then I started seeing other things that I could be good at. It wasn't just like, oh, I'm good at one thing. I'm good at all of these things, and I just kept elevating in my career until I produce Holiday Systems, which is a company that I founded now. So I love your story because coming up and especially being a minority, being black, it's like there's certain things that are put in front of you, and there's certain things that our parents may say like, "Oh, you need to go this way," or "You need
Mhm.
to go this way." But
Mhm.
me being a black male, it was hard because the only thing I had in front of me was basketball or that mine, especially being in a small town. So I love.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. And I feel like with your stories, more specifically to like your location, I feel like, people say like, oh, just because I come from a small town, like I'm very limited. And that can be true. It's not always the same for a lot of people from small towns, but that can be true. You're limited into what, you see, limited to representation, limited to opportunities. And I think that's just another reason why, of course, corporate America can provide those opportunities, but it's so important to get outside of what you're familiar with, explore the unknown, explore the unfamiliar. So kudos to you for doing that. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's amazing on both sides. I know like my cousins and like the females in my family, because I was pretty much like the only boy in my house, period. So my mom tried to say, you're going to do this way, you're going to stay away from your sisters and your cousins,
Mm-hmm.
be like this. It's like
Yeah.
she did the best she could. She was a single mother. But when I started seeing more things, and I follow this podcast, No Fugazi. I know he's going through some things right now because of people trying to bash him and things like that. But one of the things that stood out that he said, it was influence influence is thinking. No, I forgot. It's like influence is thinking, and then it's something else. But I'm gonna find it and I'm gonna quote it, but I can't quote it directly right now. But it
Yeah.
made sense because what you see it influences your thinking, and then your thinking gives you a path of what you're supposed to do, quote unquote.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of things that we receive, like looking at either that's YouTube, either that's Facebook, or that's just the people we interact with, it really has an influence on our lifestyle and what we feel like we can do. And sometimes it
Mm-hmm.
can hinder us, but other times it can push us to excel to heights that we never imagined at a younger age. So
Absolutely.
I love that, like that influential part of what he was discussing. And I talk to my wife a lot about this because we kind of live in our own little bubble at times. And when we do get out, we like to interact with people that have the same mind as far as being open to different information and different viewpoints, and not be so um, like difficult when it comes to looking at something from someone else's point of view.
Yeah.
And I think with you in your field, you have to always look at things from the other perspective, and that's what I love about it.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I will interject with this. One of my companies, um, one of their main values, which is what I appreciate about them, is empathy. And the reason why I appreciate that one of their main values is empathy is because, of course, when you're working with these clients, especially in my industry, um, you may get they're a little weary, they're a little unsure about how to navigate the challenges that they're facing in the industry. But the thing is, like you just mentioned, like putting yourself in their shoes. If this was your brand, if this was your company, if this was your organization that you're passionate about, how would you go about, you know, navigating this situation, this challenge? And it really just allows me to, yes, like tie that empathy with my creativity, with my curiosity and thinking outside of the box to come up with something that's brand new, come up with something that's never been thought of before, but also come up with something that shows, that this is what I would do if I was in your situation, and how this would positively impact not only your brand, but the people that it matters to most.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Absolutely. So another thing that I know that you probably are insightful on is data points, right? So when you do come up with these slogans, when you do come up with these strategies in different companies, you have to see how their audience will react to it. So
Mhm.
what type of data points do you pull and you look at when it's like, okay, this is working? How do you know something is working?
Yeah, so I think that taps into more of my digital expertise side of things. So, as I mentioned before, I'm both a public relations consultant and digital strategist. And I think the digital strategy part of my work is probably one of my favorite things to do. Not only does that involve drafting a lot of social media content, developing these social media campaigns and digital strategy for these brands, but it also comes with analyzing that data. Of course, we're not just going to just put out content and put out publish all of this, publish these posts, and not see how they're tracking and see how they're performing. That'd be kind of a moot point.
Yeah.
So yeah, so of course, I look at a lot of metrics and see how they are comparing. I look at um, clicks, impressions, video views, click-through rates, a lot of terminology that might sound a bit boring, but I don't know, I'm kind of a nerd. But but a lot of those things are what I look at. I compare it to how the organization or company or brand has how that content performed the previous year, or the prior months, how it compares to like the industry benchmarks in their specific sector, how it compares to their peers, their competitors. So there's a lot of different factors that come into play when you are looking at these different data points, or social media data points and metrics.
Yeah, and it's amazing. The boring things are the things that push organizations. Like a lot of people don't want to look at data; they just want to see the pretty things. Like, oh,
Exactly.
that was nice. I like that. No, we need to see if it's working or not. That's what
Mhm.
we hone in on. That's what we think about. So when we do release something, whether it is in technology on the business side, because I wouldn't say my slogan, but it's business meets technology, because the way technology is moving, every business needs some sort of technology implemented into
Absolutely.
it.
Absolutely.
So we need to key in on those data points, and we need to see what's working and what's not working. And if something is not working, how can we get it to work, right?
Exactly. And I think that's exactly what you mentioned earlier, the whole concept of being agile. When you think, you have this one route that you want to go down with in your mind, you want to test it and see if it works, and if you don't, you have to pivot. So
Yeah, and it's funny because a lot of organizations used to run in a waterfall methodology, right? Like, it's just you keep going, and no matter what, you're going to keep going this way until the end. And what a lot of organizations started to see was, well, this project can take 6 months to complete, or let's say a year. Let's go long term, a long way to go before its completion. So now you have a year until you get to the end product. You have a lot of different things that could be released in that year, but you don't want to release anything until that year is up. That's your time frame.
Yeah.
But if you wait till that year is over, the customer that you're building it for, or the people that you're presenting it to, their mind may have changed over that time span.
Exactly.
Agile is breaking those things up and releasing, and then getting feedback and seeing if we need to keep going in that direction. But if you don't release it and get feedback, in my time, you may have like a whole bunch of things that don't work or people don't want. And that's wasting money, because now you got to go back to the beginning and reconstruct and rebrand and redo everything over. So that's why I love Agile, and that's why I coach it.
I think exactly. And I think that is spot on. You hit the nail on the head. But not only are you wasting in my this can honestly be in any industry, but I say specifically with my industry, not only would you waste time, you're wasting client funding, you're wasting energy and effort, you're wasting, but also I think this is one of the most important things as well, especially when you're in a client services heavily client service industry. You don't want to waste or step into the territory of client mistrust.
Yes.
And that's one of the things that you definitely don't want to step into, or client mistrust, or even just customer mistrust or stakeholder mistrust, because these are people and individuals that will affect your business. They rely heavily into what you're doing. They invest heavily into what you're doing, and it doesn't have to be investment, financially. So yeah, that's a great point that you made.
And that mistrust aspect is also employee burnout, because why would an employee want to keep doing the same thing over and over? They're going to start looking for another place to work. They're going to start looking for, or they're going to just be disgruntled. They're not going to want to do this anymore. And now the quality goes down. The quality of the work that you're producing goes down, because everyone is like, oh, here we go again. Here we go again. And what happens as well, if you're wasting money, time, customer trust, then you're going to have to look at, okay, how can I say, as being a CEO, you're going to have to look at, how can I save this company money? Like, how can I not go bankrupt? Let's go to an extreme. How can I not lose the money that I'm investing into this company and the resources? We're going to have to do layoffs. So now is layoffs. Now it's people that are that came into the company that wanted a job, wanted to provide for their family, wanted to do a lot of different things with that money that you were giving them. But now they can't trust you, because you're going to have to keep laying people off, bringing people back in. Your employee retention is down now. You have to keep revising, rehiring. And I think a lot of companies don't really see that the aspect of Agile. When people come into organizations and teach it, we're trying to keep the customer, we're trying to keep the employees, we're trying to have a healthy work environment. And that's what I try to hone in on when I go into an organization. I want to coach them in a business development scene or way of doing things, because we want your customers to be happy, but we also want your employees to be happy. We want to have those big bonuses, we want to have those big payouts, and we want them to love working here, because when someone loves working somewhere, they'll tell others about it. Like, this is a great environment. They're happy to come to work. But if they're not, they're like, oh, I got to go to work. And you know what? They're on their phone looking for another job. while they're at work.
Yep. You got it. You got it. That's it.
So I know I want to kind of segue into my next question, right? So one thing that I had a lot of struggles breaking into technology and breaking into my career path. So what
Mhm.
type of struggles did you deal with trying to get your career started?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, finding my career path in public relations as a now 27-year-old Black woman has been a journey filled with both challenges and growth. And I think one of the main struggles that I faced was the lack of representation in the industry.
Mhm.
It was often difficult to find mentors who could relate to my experiences and provide guidance from a similar perspective. Um, Also, just I encountered biases that made it harder to prove my capabilities and gain the same opportunities as my peers. And I think, just thinking back, to overcome these obstacles, and to be honest, I still kind of face it today, but just to overcome these obstacles, I actively sought out supportive networks and, communities where I could find encouragement and advice. Um, I invested in continuous learning, to ensure that I was always at the top of my game, that I knew my stuff. And I made it a point to advocate for myself and my work. Because I after a while, after my experiences, and not saying that I'm perfect and, know it all, but, I can bring some stuff to the table. I know my stuff. And so you have to be confident in that. And so, I just think that these experiences have not only um, made me more resilient, but have also equipped me with a unique perspective that I bring to my role every day. So just thinking back to, the challenges that I did face, trying to get my foot in the door. My advice to others facing similar challenges is to never underestimate the power of perseverance. Um, and just to seek allies who can support you on your journey. Ensure that you stay true to yourself and your values, and remember that your unique perspective is a strength and it's never a weakness.
Yeah, I love that. So continuous learning is something that stood out to me when you were speaking, right? Because
Mhm.
continuous learning is knowing that you are not saying that you're not the best, but knowing that you have a lot more to learn and always being open to learning. A
Absolutely.
lot of people get into their career and they're like, "Oh, I know this. I could slack off." No, don't ever slack off, because there's always going to be things that change and there's always going to be different initiatives being pushed. So you
Mhm.
can't just relax. And especially us being minorities in corporate, we have to, and I've experienced this too, we have to go above and beyond sometimes.
Yes.
It's not a problem with going above and beyond, but you have to establish yourself so you can be that person that can help someone else. So your word is valued now because how
Mhm.
hard you've worked and how hard that you have gone being wherever you were. And now your name is what carries. Like, oh, this
Yes.
is a hard worker. They're experts at what they do. If I have a problem, I go to this person. That's what we have to do. We have to be the person that people can go to so we can reach out to our mentees and say, look, I'm going to teach you, but it's not going to be easy. As long as you stick with me, I'm going to stick with you. And that's what I try to do now.
Absolutely. I think that's great. And there was something that you just mentioned, just mentioning just how, both of us as minorities and so many other young minorities in this country. But, growing up, I told you that, my parents were heavy advocates of education, but they always instilled in both myself and my older brother. They were just, they were just saying, always remember that you have to work twice as hard just to get half of what they get. And that has always stuck with me since they told me that you have to work twice as hard just to get half of what they get. And so, yeah, just ever since then, that's just always been not my driving force, but it's never left my mind. And I think it's what pushes me to do good, to be excellent, to excel in my career, to not be complacent, to not be satisfactory with what I'm doing. As you said, being a lifelong learner, there's always something that you can learn, always something that you can invest your time into, always something that you can do greater at, and invest your time in, learn more about. There's always something. So yeah.
Yeah, and with investing your time and investing your energy, a lot of what we don't speak about at times is the sacrifice that you have to make. Like, a
Mm-hmm.
lot of people want to still do the things that they were doing while wanting to do something else.
Yeah.
But I'm here to tell you, I went hard for a whole year
Mm-hmm.
to get to where I am. I didn't go to parties. I didn't. I did drink a little bit, but I didn't drink. Like, it was not like every weekend I have to go out. I have to celebrate, because I've heard someone say, "Why are you celebrating every weekend? You're just celebrating your failures." Because a lot
Mm-hmm.
of people say, "Well, I've been to work all week. Let me go out. Let me go party. Let me go to the club. Let me go relax." What are you relaxing for? You did what you were supposed to do during the week. You went to work. Now it's time for you to do what you want to do, which should be progressing your life,
Mm-hmm.
doing that extra, putting that extra time into learning, that continuous learning, learn, network, talk to people, figure out things that you don't know, explore.
Yeah.
So that sacrifice is something that people really need to understand, because it's not going to be easy. And most of the time, I'll say after a month of trying something, most people just like, okay. And I'm saying I'm giving grace, because a month is even earlier than that at times. Like, oh,
Yeah.
I'm gonna do this. Then they do it and they're like, oh, I don't know if I can do this anymore.
To
But
give
no,
up.
you have to go harder, because I've heard Golden say this, and it's in the Bible as well. But with intention comes disruption.
Mm.
Anything that you intend to do, because you got to think, you intend to do something that you don't know how to do. It's a lot of things that you don't know. It's not just that specific thing, because that's very broad. But even in the Bible, when God created heaven, created the world,
Mm-hmm.
intended for us to be in His creation, but now we sin. He wasn't expecting us to sin,
Mm-hmm.
but
Mm-hmm.
we have freedom of choice and we have freedom to do things. So now it's disruption. So
Yeah.
everything that you do is going to be intention. There's going to be disruption with that. And as long as you make it past that disruption, you'll be okay, because you
Yeah.
got to prepare for the next disruption, because it's going
Yeah.
to be further intention in that.
Yeah. Yeah. We need to move on to the next question, because you bringing up the Bible, you're gonna have me start preaching. you talking good.
Yeah, I get very passionate about that. But
I love it. I love it. I'm right there with you.
so yeah, so and speaking of intention and disruption, so what do you feel your purpose is? Not just in
Mm,
business, but just in life in general. What do you feel your purpose is?
yeah, yeah. Wow. I will say, although I feel like that answer for me shifts daily,
Hmm.
just based on what I go through and my experiences. But I truly, truly believe that one of the reasons why I was born and put on this earth is to show people, especially Black people, Black women, that it's possible and that there's room. You often have heard the term generational wealth.
Hmm.
Passing down those assets and prized possessions to those within your family and your lineage, and not knocking that at all. That's definitely something that is great, and that people need to heavily think about and invest in. But just imagine, just imagine what you do, or what you will do when you pass down those insights and that knowledge that you've acquired over the years to those not just within your lineage, but to those who look like you and want to be in the same rooms as you and want to be in the same space as you. And remember, generational wealth does not just mean money. It doesn't have just a financial connotation to it. You're passing down generational learning. You're passing down generational healing, generational trust, generational connections. All that stuff is so important. not just for your direct bloodline, but for those who want to be in the same spaces as you, those who are looking up to you, the next and up and coming generation. So I just truly believe that's my purpose, just especially for those that look like me, to be that example and pass down and hand off what I have learned and what I've acquired over the years, so that they are not only in the places that I'm in, but are exceeding and doing far better than me in the future.
Yeah, and I feel the same way. I feel like my purpose is the same. As far as passing the baton off to
Mm-hmm.
that can run faster, can jump higher, can do all of these things. And I had a conversation with my wife because we just had our third son, and I was telling her, I said, I don't know if I want any more kids. And then, I have a revelation, and I was like, it's a lot of people here that can't have kids, right?
Mm-hmm.
Want kids, and we've been able to make it through each pregnancy healthy. Our boys are healthy, and um, there's no complications with her. Why would I say I'm not going to have any more kids? That's not my choice.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I have three boys, and now I wanted a girl. I was like, oh, I wanted a girl, but really, I looked at it like my boys will have my last name like forever, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of made me emotional because I lost my dad when I was 12. So he was shot. I lost him when I was 12, and then I had to learn how to be so many different things without guidance. So I was doing a lot of things, a lot of trial and error, trial and error, trial and error.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I got into therapy, like I'm a big advocate of therapy.
Me too. Me too.
We dove into why do you feel this way about certain things, and
Mm-hmm.
my wife and I, we're going through a little spat in our marriage, but it just was, I was trying to protect her more because I thought that that's the only thing that I was supposed to do, protect her from everything, protect my kids from everything. I didn't know how to be a husband because the only thing that I had done in my life was be a father because I had my son when I was 21, my first son when I was 21.
Yeah.
So when I got married, I think I was like 30. Yeah, I'll be 34 this year. Yeah. So I was 30 when I got married.
Yeah.
So my first son, he experienced every transition in my life. And now my other two boys, I have a 2-year-old and I have a 3-month-old, and they're going to experience a whole different version of me. But it's because I got into therapy. I made a decision to be better in life, to touch people rather than just try to chase a dollar.
Mm.
And I genuinely care about the people that I work with, and I try to elevate them and push them higher. I know we had a conversation. I was like, what I try to do with everyone that I partner with or everyone that I'm in communication with is push them push them to their highest, because not because I want more from them, but because I want to see them do more for themselves. And
Absolutely.
it's changed my life. Therapy, marriage has really changed my life. That's really changed my life. And just having three healthy, beautiful boys. I love them to death. I talk about my wife. I talk about my kids a lot because I really love the man that I have become. And my circumstances I didn't use that as an excuse. Like, oh, my dad passed away, or I'm stuck in a small town, or I don't have basketball anymore. Or I'm trying to get into corporate, and it's not going to work because there's no way they're going to let someone in that looks like me. And that's my.
Absolutely. I think that is phenomenal. And I'm just thinking back to what you said about, you're not using your life circumstances as an excuse. And I think, I've always had this thought that, you get one time to be a victim, but after that, you're a volunteer.
Yeah.
Yeah, you just want to, you want people to feel sorry for you. You don't want your circumstances to change. You don't want a different outcome. And so I think, just leveraging, the challenges that are currently present in your life, changing it for the better, making tangible, actionable steps to produce a different outcome for yourself. That's what it's about. That's what it's about. Not staying complacent, finding an answer for yourself.
I can say I've struggled being poor and being in depression, and I've struggled trying to make it out of that and get to be in a state where, and I still have a long way to go, but in a state of success.
Hmm.
I tell you, the struggle to success is better than the struggle to being complacent and just sitting in and wallowing in um, my wrongfulness, should I say? I
Yeah.
say something else, but I'm not going to say. I'm not going to say it. But
Yeah.
sitting there and wallowing in that, because no, like my uncle said before he passed away, he said because I had a span of my grandma passed away, my cousin he committed suicide, and then my uncle was sitting because I was drinking a lot, and my uncle said, "Look, get yourself together because the world isn't going to stop because you're sad."
Yeah.
And it stuck with me because the next year or a few months later he passed away, and then I was like, oh man, like, am I going to sit here and shut down, or am I going to pull myself together and really do something with my life? Because he had a purpose in telling me that,
Hmm.
and that's how I go with everything. Like, not saying that I don't sit and think about or try and mourn in a sense, but I
Yeah. Yeah.
get over things, and then I'm like, okay, let me go harder and let me produce something out of this pain.
Hmm.
I talked to my therapist about it, and he said, yeah, I mean, it's okay to mourn, it's okay to be sad, but at the end of the day, the world doesn't stop.
Hmm.
The world is going to continue to go around and around. And while you're sitting there mourning, or you're sitting there for months at a time feeling bad for yourself, you're just going deeper and deeper into a hole that you're not going to be able to get out of, because like we said before earlier in our conversation, the world is changing constantly, so you're going to be left behind.
Exactly. And I think not to not to add on to, I don't say bad news, but not to add on with the heaviness, but not only does the world, not only does it have to go on, but the world doesn't owe us anything.
No.
It doesn't owe us a single thing. So it is up to us to create that change that we want to see.
Yeah, and speaking of creating change, so what I want to get into, and I want to make a big announcement. So Trevor will be joining us at Holiday Systems and will be on the panel Wednesdays, where we discuss different life situations before we were successful, and bring others on to talk about their experiences as well. It's called Life Before. Um, Trevor and I, we've talked a few different times about how we could work together, and we're going to be pushing out information and pushing out different topics where we cover different ways to elevate your life, different ways to get in different careers,
Mm-hmm.
along with the guests that we'll be bringing on. So just want to make that announcement. We will be coming to you live Wednesday at 7:30 on Life Before. So thank you, Trevor, for all you do. Thank you for pushing the youth. Thank you for pushing our people. Thank you for doing everything that you do with the different companies and never giving up. Is there anything that you want to say before we end the call?
Oh gosh, I feel like you said everything I pretty much wanted to say. You did it. No, but I truly appreciate it. I appreciate this introduction to everybody. So excited to be joining Holiday Systems. I think you all are just doing amazing work that's needed, work that's relevant to today's times, especially with this up and coming generation who's looking to us. So yeah, as Dom said, I'll be joining them Wednesdays 7:30, but especially this upcoming Wednesday. Very excited to be diving in more into my background, my career path, but also touching and speaking on how my career path, and especially Dom's as well, with the tech background and how they merge and how they blend, and why it's so relevant to today and different organizations and brands, and just the world that we live in. So yeah, I can't wait to chat more and talk about PR and tech. And for those who are interested, in tech and are involved in tech, and also with my background, please make sure that you tune in. This is going to be a valuable, fruitful conversation. So we cannot wait to have you all on Wednesday.
All right. See you guys Wednesday at 7:30. Later.